Welcome one and all to another TMG interview, talking movies with those who make them. Paul Preston here with two of the team members behind Wavelength Productions. And I'm not going to describe Wavelength better than they explain themselves, so let me just go with their description. A full-service financing, production, and development company dedicated to supporting films that are unflinching, courageous, and radical in their approach. Wavelength has a full slate of films released and in production. Two of note have been talked about much over the last 2 years, those being Knock Down the House and Won't You Be My Neighbor. Joining me are President and Executive Producer Jenifer Westphal and Producer Joe Plummer.
Hey, that's a nice intro.
Huh?
I like that.
Can I take that on the road with me?
Sure. Yeah.
Not everybody responds that way.
Yeah, I'll cut this out for you, send it to you, and you can just play it at every live
fantastic.
engagement. Even dinners.
I'll just play the applause on my phone as you walk into the room. It'll be fun.
Have you ever been to the... we're already on a tangent. That's this show, by the way. Have you been to the Harry Potter Hogsmeade up at Universal Studios?
Yeah, I actually have. I just went the last time I was here with my son.
I got spoiled that John Williams scored my every step. I now need that everywhere that I go.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the same thing at Galaxy's Edge down at Disneyland, too. Yeah. I need that now in my life.
Yeah, once your life is set to a soundtrack, you're like, how did I survive before this?
Right? And Williams, I mean... It's not going to get better.
Right. It could be worse.
I've peaked early with people scoring my every move.
That's right. Ennio Morricone did mine.
Yeah, my kids were always terrified of hearing me walk from my bedroom to the kitchen. My son would be like, I said, what do you guys think when you hear me coming? They're like, it's not a drill. Incoming. This is not a drill. I'm like, all right, thanks, guys.
The Jaws.
That's why I love the applause. I'll play it when I walk in to see my kids. I'll just play my own applause.
Kids, go to bed. My work here is done. Well, let's. If I never talked to you before the show about whether we swear on this show, and this show isn't going out to radio stations or anything. It's just our podcast, so we do swear. And to prove it, I'll tell the world the tagline of Wavelength Productions: "We tell great fucking stories."
Amen.
Oh, that's when you need to play the applause.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I just love that you lead with that. That's great.
Yeah, my husband, who's a big corporate guy, when we first put that on our website, was like, you can't do that. And I was like, yeah, actually we can, and we are. And
right away, a guy mansplained how to do your company.
My husband is one of the best, and we have gotten nothing but fabulous reactions.
People love it. People love it.
Yeah. So I was like, in the movie industry, I think it's a little different. So we can use the F word.
Yeah, I think we're a little more.
I don't think Dow Chemical is going to put that on their website, but in the film business, people are a little more relaxed.
Yeah, exactly.
We make great fucking floor cleaners. That's not gonna.
That's
different. So you founded Wavelength in 2015. How did it come together? Now, this is a very mission-centric film company, it seems. So was it the mission and then you gathered the people around it, or was it a bunch of people you wanted to work with and you said, hey, it seems that we would all work best doing this?
Well, none of those, actually.
Oh, okay. That's why I'm not the producer.
Really how it came together was, sort of one of those serendipitous things. So I tell everybody before that, I was a stay-at-home mom, so to speak. I ran homeschooling programs for my kids and also ran a very successful autism program for my son. And then, annoyingly, they got older and all went off to college. And I just didn't know what to do with myself. So I thought, all right, let me just take a year here and figure this out. And along came this idea and I love documentary films. I've always loved documentary films. And came this idea of maybe we could tell our son's story through a documentary film. And through chocolate, I knew Joe's wife, and chocolate is always the important word to throw in here. And that's how I met Joe, because Joe was involved in television and all kinds of, movie projects. And so we got talking about this film, and next thing you know, I go to Catalyst in Sundance's program called Catalyst in 2016. And so I put together the company and thought, all right, let's do this. And I go to Catalyst 2016, and that's where I ran into Morgan Neville and his team for Won't You Be My Neighbor and got involved with that film. And
Morgan Neville at that point had already made 20 Feet from Stardom.
He'd already won the Oscar.
Won
the Oscar, right. And and they're just fabulous to work with. And so from there, Joe and I got introduced to a bunch of projects and got going on those. And then we continued. And there was another film that we had kind of come along. It's called Unschooled. It's just about ready to come out. So we just took it from there. So it's
Sounds like you could have gone into politics.
I
As much
used
as
to-
filmmaking, because it sounds like I watched
It's
Knock
funny
Down the
you
House,
say
and,
that.
and we'll get to
It's
that
funny you
because
say
it
that,
sounded
yeah.
like people who ran for all the women who ran for Congress in 2018 started stories like you did. Well, my son was this and this, and now change needs to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, it's funny enough. That's what I used to do when I was about 150 years ago when I was
Gotcha.
in my 20s. I worked on political campaigns. So I guess
Was
we
it-
just took it from there.
Well, you didn't stay with it, so was it satisfying, or have you just had enough, or?
Oh, that's one of those businesses. You either love it or you don't. There's no middle ground.
There are
And-
people who like Neil Diamond, and then there are those
People
who
that
don't like Neil
don't.
Diamond.
And I got out of that as quick as I could.
Yeah.
Especially you work for Democrats, you don't make any money. So
And you walk the walk because you have 90% female involvement in the staff of Wavelength, correct?
correct.
Joe, are you the guy?
I'm it. I'm the only
you
guy.
for real?
I'm the only man. Yep, absolutely.
But Joe speaks great woman. He's like speaks the whole
You haven't
language.
corrected Jennifer yet, so
Doesn't
mission accomplished.
mansplain
Yeah.
nothing. He's really, he knows his place.
I know how to listen.
Yeah.
I know how to keep
Knows
my
his
mouth
place.
shut, and I know how to, share my opinion and be collaborative.
So
It's
you
it's
were
a
around,
nice environment.
You were around early in it. It sounds like you met at Sundance.
Yeah.
No, we met before.
Oh, before Sundance.
Yeah,
Before
before.
Sundance,
We were doing these couple films. Joe had other projects in another film company he was working on, and then I don't know. I love great fucking stories. So these films would come along, and we got involved. I got involved with Matt Turnauer and Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood, which I just think is a fantastic documentary. And so our mission really got started because it would be like, well, what does Jen think? Does Jen like this? And that's how we got going on a lot of the stuff we're doing. Now it's more collaborative in terms of what we decide to do. But early on, it was just like, I would be like, oh, I love that. Let's get involved. Or not so much. And we'd pass. So,
I mean, you probably work with the women you work with because they're excellent.
well, I love working with women, period. I don't dislike working with men. It's just that...
Thank God.
Yeah, well, but I think for me personally, I just enjoy... We just found women who were qualified and were excellent to work with, and that's how we got started.
Yeah, as I was going to say, they're probably super qualified and well, but I didn't know if it was like a reactionary move to like being in politics. I can only imagine that's also a super man's game, and you may have come out of that going, not again.
Well, I could have, but truth be told, it is, you're sort of having me thinking now, but truth be told is when for example, when I built the team around my kids' homeschooling program, the majority of people were women. And when I built the program for my son, which we're doing a film about called How to Be Normal, it was mostly women that I worked with. So I think it was just a natural graduation into the film world, and I just started building women around me to work with. So it's what I'm used to, and it's what I love, and I think that the industry is really starting to open their eyes and realize there's a lot of talented women out there working in film, and they're working really hard. And it's not so much that they need an invitation; they need to be a seat needs to be reserved. And so when we hired the last two women that joined us, it was a mandate at that point. Not only are we going to hire women, but we're going to start looking around for women of color, women who are excited to make great documentary films. And I don't think I went and said, find me men. I just said, let's find women. Yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the talent can't be ignored once it gets seen. Like when someone like Catherine Bigelow or Nicole Holofcener, if I'm pronouncing that name correct.
Right, yeah.
So they just need the platform to allow it to be seen, to make it more visible, the work that's being done.
Very much so. And I came from prior to working with Jenifer, working in the television world, and it was very much an old boys club. I mean, it really was, and people can dispute that all that they want, but that was definitely my experience in it. And it was
And which part? Like where did you work in TV?
I started at Court TV,
Oh,
and then I was there when they transitioned over into True TV, and I'd done a lot of work, for various networks, and I'd started my own digital agency and worked with a lot of, worked with ESPN and the Discovery networks and Scripps networks, and it was a lot of white guys at the top, and again, it's for us, it's not a mandate, but it is, film is such a collaborative art form. And we have found that women make really great collaborators. There's a lot less of a need to sort of stake your territory and defend it at all costs mentality. And honestly, I just find it really enjoyable. I like collaborating. I think that's sort of the heart and the soul of this business. If you can collaborate, work well with others, and that's been our experience.
And you had 4 films at Sundance this year.
This year and last year.
And last year.
And last year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, wow, you guys are prolific as well.
Yeah, and
Ranking them out.
Jen's very modest. I mean, she, we did start out saying, what is Jen like? But Jen has really good taste, which is great. That's a really helpful thing when someone can look at an entire slate of films and choose the 2 main winners that are going to come out from that slate, and that's been a little bit of our North Star for the past couple of years, and we've started to branch out. But you mentioned the word mandate. We're not really a mandate-driven company in the sense that we have a mission to maybe raise awareness about political issues or environmental issues. What our mandate is to tell great fucking stories.
Right.
And if that is a political story, awesome. I mean, that was a big thing with Knock Down the House. We saw that story early on, and all 4 of those women drew us in. And we said, the story of all 4 of these women needs to be told. It's amazing that AOC broke loose and rose to the heights that she did, but we were interested in all 4 of those stories getting out there. And that's, again, it's not a mandate, but that's what sort of turns us on and gets us excited. The story of Mr. Rogers, that's a story that has to be told. It has to be seen.
Would you consider that a political story?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even though you're like, we don't do political stories, I think of the Mr. Rogers and what he stands for and his story being told in this era, it has a political lean to it,
100%.
in fact that it needs to be seen by everybody.
Well, and right, exactly. And the word that comes to mind in both films is radical. These were people, Fred Rogers back in the 50s and 60s took radical steps to build out a television show for children, but not to entertain them, but to connect with them. And that's a very different space especially back then in television. And then you have the 4 women in Knock Down the House. They all came to the political arena for various different reasons, but they were all very emotionally attached to these reasons. And, and I think that's the word for me again is radical, because I think we're entering an era where we can actually, women and being emotional is actually, it's now a, what's the word? I always forget this word, but it's it's important. We have to get some emotion into the workplace. We have to allow people to not be just robots, but, actually express emotions and be emotional about things. And all 4 of the women and Fred Rogers were very connected to that space. And, so that's what drives me. And not only is it a great story, but the reason behind why we need to tell the story and why people need to see the story is because their stories matter. And that's what I love about women in film is women have great stories to tell. And for too long, they've been told by men. And, some of these movies I see, and I think, that's not what women think at all. And so to me, it's like, but when women tell it, it's so much more fun, especially as
and
a
authentic.
Woman. And it's authentic, and it's real, and it's what really women go through and deal with. So
you reminded me of you saw the film 8th Grade. Bo Burnham's
Oh, yeah,
film.
great film.
And I remember seeing that when it premiered at Sundance. I was so moved by that film, and I thought, God, I don't know what it's like to be an 8th grade girl. But having seen that film, I feel like I do. And then I heard an interview with Bo Burnham because I was sort of so impressed. I was like, how did Bo Burnham get inside the mind of this young girl? And then I heard an interview with him on NPR, and he talked about how his wife read all of the scenes and would give him notes and help him out with it. And I thought, that's it, because I can't write that.
No.
I can't write that perspective. But clearly there was a woman helping drive that train, and I thought that was a really it was impressive of him to give her as much credit as he did. But it was also sort of made a lot of sense. I didn't feel as bad that I didn't know what it was like to be an 8th grade girl.
Yeah, that's a great. Obviously, that workflow.
Yeah.
Yielded great rewards,
Right,
and also
right.
filtering it through that great actress Elsie Fisher, who was
Oh,
fantastic.
amazing.
But you had to feel or relate to Josh Hamilton of the father in that, though, right? So you feel like, I don't know how women talk, but that guy, we don't get enough Josh Hamilton.
No, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
He was
in that
fantastic.
role.
I'd like to see a Hamilton Sans. Is that what it would be? McConaughey Sans or whatever. We get a Hamilton Sans.
Hamilton Sans.
I would like to see him do more.
Every dad. You can play every dad.
You should.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah.
And so then at Sundance, did you sell Won't You Be My Neighbor last year and then Knock Down the House this year?
No, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Yeah, it premiered the year before, and it was already sold to Focus by the time it was at Sundance. And Knock Down the House, the Netflix deal happened right after they premiered the film.
So do you get wined and dine? How's that all work? I don't even know how those sales are made. Is it literally like at a party over, hey, we'll meet tomorrow, sign the papers?
It's
or
a
how's
lot
it all
less
work?
interesting than anybody realizes.
Yeah.
We also had our film, Where's My Roy Cohn, sold to Sony Pictures Classics at
sold there,
Sundance
yeah.
at the same time. But it's a lot of phone calls and a lot of hushed conversations, and it's all kind of frenetic.
Got to feel great though to get the initial
Yeah,
feedback.
absolutely.
I mean, do you get? That's what I'm saying. Is it over and you're like, and then anybody, or is there an immediate reaction and you feel fulfilled?
Well,
right
what's
out
interesting
the gate?
is there's two things that happen that I'm learning as a filmmaker when you have a film premiere is you want the audience reaction. That's always important.
Yeah.
And then you want to know how many buyers are in the audience and what did they think. And so it's and we're just coming into this part of the business. So Won't You Be My Neighbor, Knock Down the House, Where's My Roy Cohn, Infiltrators was another film of ours. Night Comes On was Jordana Spiro, was her first acting.
And that's a narrative, right?
That's a narrative
Yeah,
film, and that premiered a couple years ago. And just going through the process with the filmmakers about, again, premiering, selling, who's going to buy, how do you do all this distribution stuff anyway, has been an enormous learning experience. And so we
happening quickly.
Happening quickly. And yeah, we've been around for 3 years now, 4 years. But the other thing too for us is we have some of our own original content coming out. And we have 4 films right now that we're working to hopefully get out 2019, 2020. And so it's just, I see a lot of the work we do, and I go back to your other comment, which is one of the things that we've done a lot of work on in the last 3 years is building great relationships with people, production companies, directors, producers. We'll go talk to anybody, anytime. And through that process too, we've been able to sort through and build some really nice relationships with some production companies that we really like and some directors and people. So that I don't think people understand as much about making movies is a lot of it is the relationships you build, the people yes, you need a great story, but you also need a great network to get your story told. And I think we've done an amazing job at just quietly going about meeting as many people as possible.
Yeah, the amount of material entering the marketplace right now is astronomical. I mean, it's been as high as it's ever been. And so those relationships, those partnerships, friendships in a lot of cases for us, it just, it's invaluable moving forward because...
It seems like everything I get involved with becomes super saturated as soon as I get involved with it. I'm going to do improv, and then whose line is it anyway? Coming to you, and everybody does it. Yeah, I'm going to make short movies, and then we cut from $3,000 worth of film stock to a $4 mini DV tape, and then everybody made movies.
Well,
I'm going to podcast, and then everybody. So it takes a lot to rise to the top, and I'm not surprised that networking is part of it. And you guys don't even live here, right?
Right.
But for anyone who wants to move to LA, it's the hard reality.
Yeah.
It's who you know.
Yeah.
It's got to,
It is
exactly.
who you know.
We come out for a week at a time, and we're wall to wall the entire week, and we just make it that way because we want to make sure we meet and talk to as many people as possible, and pitching projects, and they pitch us, and So it's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, really fun.
I appreciate being on that wall.
Yeah.
There was room
Yeah,
to come by
awesome.
and say hello. All right, so let's talk about, one last question about the company overall. So poopy fart jokes, movies, explosions, movies, they're just out, right? You're not going to make them?
We haven't had one yet.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
if you find one that catches our eye,
All
we
right.
might,
You know,
we
my
might consider
son
it.
said if he could have directed, oh gosh, what was that? The kid in the diaper. I just lost his name. Cut this one out till I can remember. It was my favorite thing. I've just completely lost it.
I don't know what movie.
You know-
Captain Underpants.
Captain Underpants.
Great film.
He said,
No, I have to leave the struggle to get Captain Underpants in the show.
I can't believe I can't remember that because I read every Captain Underpants book to him. And, he said if I could have directed Captain Underpants, my life would be complete.
Well, there are a bunch of books.
Could be.
So
there's a bunch of books.
There's more movies.
So
That's possible.
we could run
It's
into
possible. Listen,
a good fart joke is
we never say no.
lost. And we never say no. We never know. Yeah.
No, we did start out with a very interesting kind of poetic and appropriate mandate. You know, that we were
about
interested in films of
hope and-
hope and
yeah.
conversation. Really, when it came down to it, though, we're like, we just want to tell great fucking stories.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That won't get tired. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about Knock Down the House then, because it's available right now. Sometimes people come on here and plug up whatever movie that's going to open. But right now and for a while, Knock Down the House has been out there. It's the story of four women running for Congress in the 2018 elections, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York and Cori Bush of Missouri, Paula Jean Swearingen, my personal favorite from West Virginia, and Amy Villela, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Nevada. And it's about what AOC, now as they call her, has said in the film. This is about electing us to Congress, like us, the people, not the next guy who's, oh man, this Joe Crowley, who she ran against. So much to say. But first of all, I find it fascinating that the whole movie is about them running against the Democratic incumbents.
Yeah.
Like this isn't even the struggle to take down the
Absolutely.
Republican regime.
That's right.
They're just trying to make a stake in the party.
Right.
And this Joe Crowley is such a smarmeister. I mean, God, the condescension oozing out of the guy. I don't even think he knows he's doing it. It's just the career
The
that he
smugness
is.
is what I found.
Yeah.
Right.
There was never a moment on his face where he considered that he might lose,
Right.
which was so great for the film.
Yeah, exactly.
You really need, you don't have, the AOC without the Joe Crowley to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and
who
really,
she ran against. For
Yeah,
you know.
and he played that part to the hilt. And it's almost,
As if it was an actor.
it's almost, it's almost incredible that it's a documentary. You think this guy can't be this tone deaf, can he? He does know there's cameras, right?
Well, my experience is, especially having worked in politics, is old white men have hearing problems like you can't believe. Understanding problems, they got a lot of problems.
Yeah, old white man. It's just those shots of Congress of just an old white-haired sea of.
It's
You know
unbelievable.
that picture they showed of the guy, the Alabama Senate that
Yes.
voted for the
yeah.
anti-abortion laws? All old white men.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still too many, in my opinion, but hopefully time will take care of that.
Well, let's listen to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This is a quick clip from Knock Down the House.
If I was a rational person, I would have dropped out of this race a long time ago.
Crowley hasn't had a primary challenger in 14 years.
He's taken $3 million per cycle. He's gonna tell me I'm small, that I'm young, that I'm inexperienced. I'm running because everyday Americans deserve to be represented by everyday Americans.
So supposedly, I want to get the name right here, Rachel Lears, who made the film, started making it, actually, full credit, Rachel Lears and Robin Blotnick, because between the two of them, that's how the film was written, shot, edited, and directed. Pretty major roles handed out to these two ladies.
Right.
Robin's a lady too, I assume. Yeah, okay. So Rachel started the day after Trump was elected to start making this film. And then you came in when?
We actually, like Joe said, we didn't know about the film not that long after. I would say probably a year later.
Yeah.
Probably early.
Yeah, it was
early 2017. I think we first heard about
fairly
it.
early on.
The way the film was originally going to happen was they were on a timeline of having the film come out in 2020, and we had talked to them about you might want to think about it coming out earlier than that, especially if AOC wins. And so that's what they did, which was great. So we actually didn't hear back about it until it was going to Sundance. It was also a fully granted film, so it's one of those spaces as a producer we're finding that sometimes you want to get in on those films, sometimes not. It just depends, because you just never know if they're actually going to get made. So we were really excited to hear that they were going to Sundance. So we got right in.
And so Ocasio-Cortez was already the main subject of the film well before you guys got in. Tons of it was shot. So how did Robin know that she was a slam dunk documentary lead subject? Because
I don't think she know. I don't think
Did she just
thought
pick
she was
4
a slam
women,
dunk.
or-
Yeah,
she
right.
was focusing on 4 women from
all
different
4.
backgrounds with different
I guess that
reasons.
question was more like, how did she know that? I mean,
Right.
like more like in the mystical world of,
Yeah.
she just picked the right person to be the.
And that's the beauty of documentary
Yeah.
film. Sometimes you're standing in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know that a lot of people believed AOC could beat Joe Crowley until she did.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there was, she was not ahead in the polls, for most of that campaign. And the focus of the story, as Joe said, is it was on all 4 women. And the one thing that I love about this film, it's a great film and I love AOC, but they really, all 4 of the women worked together. I mean, there's this great story that's not in the film where one of the women fell ill and she couldn't canvas over a weekend. So AOC flew down, and I can't remember which one it was.
I thought it was Amy Villela.
I thought it was Amy too. She flew down and canvassed for the weekend for her. So all 4 women were in contact with each other, helping support each other. So that's the piece that I love the most about the film, because honestly, even as women filmmakers and people out in the world, women have to start supporting women. And we have to be each other's advocates. I think for a long time in the white man's world, it was about competing for attention. And now I think it's about supporting each other as we go full steam ahead. So for me, that's the most exciting thing about this film.
And there are political action networks that they were part of, represented in the
Correct.
film,
Right.
that I forget their names.
Correct. I don't remember.
There's a
the-
couple different ones.
there were a
There's
couple
actually
different
Well, you'll have to watch the
There's
movie.
somebody actually doing a documentary about one of those organizations. And I can't remember.
That
what
helped
they're
them
called.
come together as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you'll see there's a shot where they're all wearing the purple T-shirts
Yeah,
together.
right.
The something or something other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
remember
amazing
what it was
grassroots
called.
organizations, and they're out there, looking at the grassroots level to find what AOC just described as, everyday people, to start representing everyday people, and that's, I think that's going to be a powerful message going forward in the political arena.
I think Nevada, Missouri, and West Virginia, where the other women ran, are tougher to turn.
Oh, yeah.
Because all 4 of these women ran on not being candid. Like, the problem with, I think, a lot of people had with Hillary was just how polished she was, how measured, and she might as well have been a guy.
Yeah.
The way she reacted to a lot of the situations that she was dealt with in her campaign. These women ran on vulnerability, I thought, and that's a powerful stance to take, and a risky one. And I think New York was probably most open to receiving that, and that's why she won. And hopefully the women stay with it and turn the other states as well.
I think the other 2 of the 3 are running again for 2020. I believe.
Yeah,
I don't
think
know
Barbara
for
Jean is, and I think Amy is.
Amy is, yeah. I think they're running again.
And you bring up an interesting point about Hillary. I would say that, for a long time, I think for a woman to succeed in a man's world, they had to adopt the persona and the behaviors and the attitudes of men.
Yeah, that's addressed in the film too. Like, you have to be this way, you have to be that
and
way.
Hillary was, part of. I don't fault Hillary for that. Hillary was doing what she had to do to survive in that environment.
Right.
What I love about these women is that that's not what they're doing. They're not trying to be men.
They don't care.
That's right. They're leading.
I
with
remembered
it.
the word. They bring emotional capital to, and now it's a superpower. It's not so much considered a
liability,
weakness or a liability. So that's, again, you mentioned vulnerability, emotions. They ran for these offices because one was concerned about all the cancer that was happening in her town. Another one, her daughter died because she didn't have
Healthcare.
healthcare.
That was just.
I mean, these are just very soul-wrenching stories, and
not unusual.
it's not unusual.
I mean, that's the really hard
and then
thing.
to turn that into something like, listen, I'm going to run for office against all odds. Again, in those states, AOC in New York, in a Queens, she did have a better shot at a old timer like Joe Crowley. And you're right; these other women are climbing up a pretty steep mountain. So it gets me goosebumps actually to think about that they're still out there running and given all the trauma in their lives. So it's very inspiring.
And everyone knows Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won, so it's not a big surprise. So to talk about that scene, but when she does, in the bowling alley scene where they're all watching her victory, is one of the more emotional and exciting scenes you're going to get. More
if
so than
cry,
even a narrative film.
Yeah. If you don't cry, you're not a person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's good to know I'm a person.
Or you're a Republican.
Or you're a Republican.
But then you're crying for a very different reason.
And then that film is followed by the emotional drive home, the emotional point of everything and why she ran is driven home at her arrival at the Capitol. Just
so awesome.
It's outstanding.
It's a very inspiring film.
Yeah, it's Netflix right now. Go check it out. And 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, incredible.
70 critics, too. Yeah. So it's not like two people chimed in. At least 70 critics.
Yep.
Yeah.
And 100%.
Yeah,
that's
great.
No,
that's
it was
rare.
very exciting, too, to be a part of a film that really is a cultural milestone.
Right.
And obviously we've had a handful of films now at this point that we've been able to sort of ride from the beginning to the distribution part. And, some of them do better than others. But this one really sort of set the bar for, as far as a film and its impact on the entire social landscape, political landscape. This is a film that'll be talked about for a very long time. So it was very exciting to sort of see it come together and, know that we were talking to Rachel and Robin before anybody had any idea what this film would become.
Right.
It was a fun ride.
The other thing, too, and I've gotten in trouble with some of my Democratic friends for saying this. And I said this before 2018 happened. I'd say to people, if there can be a silver lining to our current president's behavior and that he's even our president.
I would love to know what that is.
Yeah. And I said this in 2017 and I feel like it came true in 2018 is now, and we can't prove it, if Hillary had been president, would as many women who ran in 2018 would be the same. But for me, Donald Trump really inspired people to get up off the sofa and get involved politically. And the number of women, especially women of color, who took a radical step out and ran for office and voted. I mean, the women in Alabama are some of my heroes because they made sure that horrible Roy Moore, is that what's his name?
Yeah.
Who wants to run again?
I know, but didn't win.
Let's go, ladies.
So it's really girl power at its finest, and so can we say that's the silver lining of Donald Trump? Maybe not, but it does kind of feel like we got to wake up and women, and we've got to get out and run, and we've got to be active. It's only way.
They didn't take the Senate. That's the win, though. Because some people will say, well, we didn't win because we didn't take the Senate. But that's the win that we had in 2018.
Exactly. And there's going to be more in 2020. You watch. This is now a thing, women running for office. And you watch in 2020, I think it was something like maybe 2 years before, it was like 60 women ran for office. And in 2018, it was 240, I think.
Right.
And I think it's only going to get higher from there. And not just for Congress and Senate, but at the state levels, at the county levels, at the township levels. You're seeing more and more women taking over these leadership positions. And it's got to happen.
And if you're wondering if you'll like it, it won the Audience Award.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sundance, right?
Sundance.
So people like it. It's not just a political. People say it's approved. It's a people movie.
Yeah, it's a great film.
Yeah, like I
you
said.
will rah.
Yeah.
Or again, you're dead.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Won't You Be My Neighbor then.
Is dead.
The other film on your slate that I was a big fan of. First of all, let's just say, where was the Oscar nomination? You got to probably keep mom on this, so I'm just going to say it for you. Where was the Oscar nomination? Unfair.
It was
not.
It was an interesting weekend.
watching those 5 movies come up, all very well qualified for the Oscar nods they got, but not seeing. I was like, it didn't get nominated. Like it was shocking.
Free Solo was excellent.
All of them.
I think it's the only one I saw.
Yeah.
But
they're all great. I mean, we know personally what it takes to make a documentary film. So to me, you get that far with your film in any kind of space. I applaud all of them.
Well, if you haven't seen Which Be My Neighbor, it is a story of Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, and his entire, more or less his entire career and what he stood for. And mainly, it shows you that he was legit. The guy you saw on TV was Fred Rogers. Not that you ever thought maybe he wasn't, but it's amazing.
You'd be surprised.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
How many people said to me before this film came out, please tell me he's not a creeper. I really I can't deal with another.
I remember when you called me and you were like, I'm going to get involved in this. Won't you be my neighbor? And I was
you
like,
said,
please tell me he wasn't a creeper. Please, don't
Your
take that
closest
away
are
from
still
me.
going, are we really getting involved
like,
in
this
this?
year has been so bad already.
Morgan said that was the number one question
Wow.
when they found out he was making this film. Yeah.
Because to me, it's not so much that, I'm shocked that he doesn't have a seedy underbelly, but I'm shocked that a movie about someone without one could be as successful as it was.
And in fact, it's the inverse of that. Not only did he not have a seedy underbelly, but he was sort of surrounded by goodness in a way that you just don't really encounter it like that. I mean, to me, and to see it proven in the film was really, very, very moving. To realize that this guy really believed what he said and he really practiced what he preached and he did it his whole life. It's remarkable.
The opening scene of Fred Rogers at the piano and he's playing with these chords, right? There's a reason why that was the opening scene, because it sets the stage for what he was all about. And he was very, like everything he thought about, he thought of how would a child feel in this situation. So that opening scene when he talks about moving from I think it was one chord to F sharp, and how that's a harder chord. And so he talked about modulation and how children have a hard time modulating in certain situations. So that's what the show is about. And I mean, literally the first week was about the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. And then he did divorce and death. And I mean, he tackled some tough race.
Big time.
Tackled some really big
Politics.
issues through the eyes of a child. And that's what he was. That's why they said it was radical, what he was doing.
I mean, it's still radical today.
It is.
The idea of creating something on television that isn't designed to sell something to your children is revolutionary still. And it's all geared towards making these children into consumers, and to have someone come in and say, no, this medium is actually a way to connect with and help children. People are like, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? You can't waste that precious bandwidth on the spectrum to broadcast. We could sell millions of widgets to these children. Get out of here.
Right.
And here's this guy quietly toiling away in Pittsburgh public television, making this film that, essentially, again, it's a cultural milestone. I mean, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is deeply embedded in the psyche of people my age who grew up with that program. And
and as you say, it's a time capsule not just of him, but of the era.
Yeah,
that he was living in, and we could use more of today.
And I remember when Jen actually got involved in that project, and we both thought fairly confidently, well, that's a great story that has to be told. And that's Mr. Rogers is obviously an engaging person, but we never sort of realized how the timing of the film was going to resonate and affect it so tremendously, because we knew it would do well. We didn't know it would do as well as it did. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that it came out when it did.
Is it the highest grossing?
Biodoc of all time. Yeah.
Biodoc.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
Biodoc, yeah.
So Michael Moore's probably got you beat with his antics.
Yeah.
Right? Antic docs. You'd probably make more money.
Yeah.
But for Biodoc, no, that's great.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
Congrats.
no, it's great. And the other thing too is we started to touch on the impact. You know, I could tell you. I read a story about the Fred Rogers film, the show he did. I read a story in Life magazine, like again 150 years ago when it was still around, about a young boy who was lived in a horribly abusive situation. But while his abusers, whether his parents and family people, were asleep in the mornings, he would watch "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" And or it was called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So many names of this show. Anyway, he would watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he was interviewed by Life magazine and talked about the fact that was the show that saved his life, because there was Fred Rogers saying, "I like you just the way you are." And that's what carried him through to get out of this abusive situation as a young teen, and then to go on and do something in his life.
Wow.
And
Wow, yeah,
Never
because he
heard
could
that
easily
story.
just.
yeah, it's from a long time. I loved Life magazine. I was
That is
very
a
sad
great
when
story.
it didn't. Yeah, but and that's one of so many.
Yeah,
And I got a text one night from a friend of mine whose friends had just lost their daughter. She was 24 and died in a car accident. And they had the whole family over to just have a movie night and just, try to help them through this horrible situation. And so they watched Won't You Be My Neighbor? And she texted me, she's like, okay, so we're all crying and it's a good cry. Like, I think this has been a very important film for my friend and her family to try to start to heal a little bit. And it's endless. And
It's just devoid of cynicism.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
So
it's like
right.
him, or and the things
right.
attached to him,
Oh,
and
the
this film
people-
that's come out of it.
People, when I say, oh, I was involved with Won't You Be My Neighbor, they literally look at me and start to cry. They're like, you have no idea what impact that film had on me. And I'm like, I think I do a little bit because I know how it impacted me, but you and 10,000 other people that I've spoken to. I mean, it's just, as Joe said, it's a film that is like no other.
Can you watch old shows? Can you watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? I mean,
You
probably
can
on
find
YouTube.
them on YouTube
Yeah.
mostly,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think,
But
yeah.
and then every so often, I think they rebroadcast some every so often.
Yeah.
I can't
PBS?
remember.
Yeah,
I think they were on. Were they on iTunes for a bit? Someone was telling me, because I wanted my son to watch them. I really did. My son is he's a very sensitive kid, and he watches a lot of shows that are, trying to sell him stuff. And
Pulverizing
he
it.
watched a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood once. I can't remember where I found it, and it really impacted him. I mean, he just sat down and watched the whole show, and it was a very calm experience as opposed to laugh tracks and explosions and superheroes. Like, we went to see the Avengers Endgame, which is nothing against Marvel. I love these films, but I felt like I had PTSD when I came out of the theater. It's like, Jesus.
A lot goes on in that. A lot goes on in
I've
that.
never seen so many people get punched in the face or have their limbs hewn from their body
I know.
before.
I don't watch those movies.
Oh no, that movie sets up a plot for itself that there's no way they should pull off, and somehow the movie's crazy.
And I love the Russos. I mean, it's a great franchise, but it's a very different
No, I
experience.
know. Those movies have become more adult as they've gone along.
Yeah.
You could watch Iron Man and be like, I'm having fun, and then by Endgame, you're like, I'm emotionally spent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would bet it's scarred for life. So
Yeah, you would be.
I always say if it can't be shown on the Weather Channel, then I can't watch it.
I'm going to make a rare comparison of Won't You Be My Neighbor and Marvel.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, back when The Dark Knight actually came out, Gary Oldman, such a good actor,
Yeah.
made goodness watchable. That's his character as Commissioner Gordon.
Sure.
He's nothing but good.
Truth, right.
Oh, yeah.
He's not. He has no like. Oh, we're worried about Gordon. He's going to go off the edge. He's not Riggs in any way.
Yeah.
He's just good. Captain America, same thing. Always good. Always doing the right thing. I could do this all day. Makes the right choices. Will not stop fighting. He's just right and good. And I can't believe they pulled off those characters on TV because they
Right.
should, or in the movies because
Yeah.
they shouldn't.
Right.
They should be.
Truth. Right.
They should be difficult and then just fail. And Captain America movies have failed in the past. And again, Morgan Neville makes goodness watchable with Won't
He
You Be My
does.
Neighbor.
Well,
And it's hard.
a lot of his movies are that way. The Music of Strangers that he did about Yo-Yo Ma is one of my favorite films of all time. And Best of Enemies is a remarkable
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah.
So
The Plimpton one, who was
Best of Enemies was the '68 Democratic convention debates that went on between William F. Buckley and
not George Plimpton.
And
no, that's wrong.
The
other guy.
My old lady wine-soaked brain is just not working today.
My non-wine-soaked brain is not working today.
And all the people in that political action group we were talking about, all the people who we can't remember, they were in this movie.
Well, it's Matt's.
Not William Sapphire. It's
No, it was William F. Buckley called him a queer right on one of the debates.
Yeah, no, Gore Vidal.
Gore Vidal. Right.
Sorry.
You know, that guy that we couldn't remember.
One of the most famous authors of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
That guy.
That guy. Anyway, that's a brilliant movie. And then, of course, 20 Feet from Stardom. You know, again, it's he makes goodness into films that are, you know, also entertaining. And that's what we find a lot when we're thinking about even the films we're doing, is we're realizing is in the documentary space, there's a really important place for the story for sure, but it's also got to be entertaining. You know, we kind of as an audience demand that now. You know, the Ken Burns does amazing documentaries, right? Mm-hmm. And they're 10 hours, and you got to be really committed to that story, right? And I think that there's nothing wrong with telling a great and very important story, and also being able to tell it in a way that's entertaining. And not entertaining in a like a Marvel way, but entertaining in terms of it captures your attention. And there's ways to do these docs now. You know, we're working on music scores. You know, one of them we're doing some really fabulous animation. So there's a lot of fun we're having with telling these stories.
It's hard for a doc to get made nowadays without animation. Just side note, every documentary I see has some kind of animation. I watched Won't You Be My Neighbor, I'm like, oh, there's the animation. Of course, that animation is just
amazing.
So heartbreaking because you see why that story is told and everything later.
But there's a sea change in the doc world that Jenifer is highlighting that I think is really important for people to realize is happening, because for a long time doc films were sort of the world of the journalist and the social activist. And now that they've found their audience and people are really, really drawn to this stuff, it's not that there's no room for the social activism. It's not that there's no room for the journalism. In fact, that stuff is as important as ever. But you're now able to bring all of the assets of real movie making and filmmaking to bear. And for a long time you couldn't. They just didn't have the budgets to do it.
Right.
Now the budgets are starting to come up and people are able to bring in things like animation, which is extremely expensive.
Great editing.
Great editors, So you can make a film that's important and engaging at the same time.
Has a documentary ever been nominated for Best Editing at the Oscars? I'd like to see that.
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question.
I don't think it has.
I know. I actually was thinking that this is
if nothing else,
my brain works.
If nothing else, it should win for most editing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most time in the edit.
You should win an award for how many years you're in an edit. If you go over a year, you qualify. One of the things that did go through my mind when we were watching the Oscar nominations this last year is when Won't You Be My Neighbor was not nominated in the doc category, I turned to my husband and said, wouldn't it be something if it got nominated for Best Picture?
That's
like
right.
have a doc
That's right.
nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
That didn't happen, obviously.
Well, you know what? Ever since foreign film's been a category for a long time, but ever since animated came along, don't expect either of those to win Best Picture. No. It just seems like you can relegate.
Roma made a run at it, I think.
But then it won foreign, and you kind of went, it's probably not going to win Best Picture. You know, so they kind of relegate those genres to their category.
Right.
All right, well, let's wrap things up with the question I ask everybody who comes on the show. What is your favorite movie of all time? Let the struggle begin.
Well, so there's a qualifier.
Yeah.
Is it the movie you've watched the most times?
Sure.
Or is it like your favorite movie, but you just haven't watched it 3 or 4 million times?
Sure.
Okay, either. Okay.
So that's the thing. Some people say it's the movie I've watched the most. Some people say that for me, it's a movie I think I've been with the longest, that I loved, and I can't, like Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, great.
I don't care. I'm going to watch it. I'm watching it at the Arrow next week. I get to watch that in the theater because I live in LA every year, and I do. Yeah. And it's, I think, 37 years or whatever now it's been with me. So by now it's, nothing's going to unseat it just due to time. It also happens to be excellent and achieves 100% excellence on every front, from
Yeah.
story to acting to locations and shooting, and so some people say if it's on, I'm in for an hour, whether I'm doing something else or not. Some
Yeah.
people say, you come up with your own why, and then pick a winner. And you know what? Tomorrow it could be something different.
No, mine is hands down. My kids, if I said anything other, they'd be like, "Mom, you totally made shit up." Is Pride and Prejudice, and it's the version
The
recent.
Joe Wright one?
Yes.
Oh.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh my God, I've watched it
Now,
so often that I can quote it, and I also watch it now where there's some scenes I don't particularly care for, so I just go through those and get to the scenes I like. So
That's
it's
good.
sort of my.
That means you
it's
watched
my
it a lot.
It's my blanket film because it's like
Cozy.
When I just get up there and look at all the films to watch, I go, oh, I'm just going to put Pride and Prejudice on.
What year was that made?
2006,
Five?
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because it
And,
wasn't that long.
and I think too, you get a movie that, like you said, you've been with Raiders of the Lost Ark for 37 years. You get a movie that sort
38.
of 38.
Yeah.
Oof. So you're 41.
Me?
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
What she said.
Yeah, what she said. I started watching Pride and Prejudice when I was 10. Not really.
There you go.
Not really. No, but I think there's also
You've already referenced things happened 150 years ago for you a couple of times.
truth.
so,
I know.
yeah.
So math is not my thing.
Trip to the Moon is my favorite movie. It's out in the theater. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But I think one of the things too, the movie really hits you at a time in your life. Maybe you're struggling with something, or maybe there's just something about it that speaks to you, given what you're going through. And I think when that movie came out, again, I told you the story. My kids, they were getting older and they were kind of running their own lives at this point. And you, as a mother, there's a period of time you go through which you're realizing you're not needed as much. And a lot of moms who've gone through this will know, it might not sound like it can be a dark time, but it's like, you're kind of struggling for your identity a little bit. And that film came along, and it just, Elizabeth Bennet being the powerful, person she was at a time when women were just looked at to be married off, especially to someone with money, that she really, stood for her principles. And I always found her character to be the one most intriguing for me. So
I got to watch it now.
That's a great, yeah.
Yeah.
He's sitting here struggling about, I don't know how to choose it. And that's a great way to choose the best.
So I was laughing because you were saying, it's best editing, best directing, best script. And I was like,
Well, Joe Wright's no slouch, though.
He's no slouch, but I wouldn't nominate it for any of those.
Now, my wife would have a problem of switching to Matthew McFadden from Colin Firth on the TV show, the BBC series. My wife's in love with Colin Firth, and I don't think she can make that leap. Yeah. I think she saw Pride and Prejudice, but doesn't talk about it as much as she talks about the TV show.
Well, I'm 100%, but I felt like, and I know a lot of people don't love Keira Knightley. I wouldn't put her as the best actress in the world, but I do think that role was really made for her, and I liked her Elizabeth Bennet better than I liked the famous actress who played Elizabeth Bennet, whose name now I don't know.
Gore Vidal.
No, she's actually a Tony-winning stage actress. She's super famous, but she was really young then when she did this film. And anyway, so
if only I had
agree.
access to all that information on a computer.
But I exactly.
Only there was
wait.
Only there was a website I could type things into.
We have all the knowledge we need right here in our hands. Matthew McFadden, though, is in that film is actually quite nice to look at.
Yeah, it's true.
So
You're not going to put a chump in the
when
Mark
he walks
Darcy
across
role.
that grass towards Elizabeth Bennet, I'm like, I'm done. I'll be done in that situation.
Yeah, they didn't have.
I'm definitely going to watch.
They didn't have him come out of the lake like Colin Firth because that's tough to top.
Although, aside from, I was just thinking, what is my other favorite film? My other favorite film is The Birdcage.
That's playing it here at an outdoor screen.
Is it really?
Saturday.
Lane
If you're around on Saturday.
Williams.
Great film.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
If you're on
but that's
Saturday.
another film too. There's certain scenes I'm like, don't love that scene, so I just fast forward through. But that's one of my favorites.
And my wife and I like any scene in that with Hank Azaria.
Any scene with Hank Azaria is I mean, my daughter and I quote that film constantly. Yeah.
Joe?
It's a good one. My favorite film all time is Vertigo.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
an old classic.
I
But
need
I
to
think
see
it's
that again.
I love that film because it's the most, for me, perfect cinematic experience. I feel like I've been completely transported to another time, another place, another experience. I completely disconnect from reality when I watch it, and very few films have ever had that sort of impact on me. So
One of the more complex Hitchcock movies, I
Yeah,
think. And
yeah.
so much so I saw it too young. I need to watch it again. I need to watch Chinatown again, Network.
Chinatown, oh my
And
God.
all these, I
Yes.
watched them because
Yeah.
I
That
really
was
got
a
into
great
film
film.
early, and I
Yeah.
was like, when I was 2 and saw Raiders in the theater.
Yeah.
And so I went to like catch up on a whole bunch of good stuff, and I think it just all went over my head, and I need to revisit it again.
Even in
but
even
Vertigo's
the
one
color of the film in Vertigo, I think is really fascinating. Actually, it's one of those things where it's not quite right, it's not quite natural, but somehow it's very evocative for me anyway, and really draws me into it. So I feel like as like a cinematic movie going experience, and I had a chance, thankfully, to see it on a big screen once, and I was just totally transported by the movie. Which
And Hanks is our Jimmy Stewart, right? That's the closest
yeah,
we got.
yeah.
Right, I think, because Stewart could play anything.
Yeah.
He could play anything.
That's right.
He played villain. He
And
played
he was
Western.
always
he
the
played-
same guy, but you never got
but
tired.
but
of him.
authentic in it.
And never.
You know?
You're like, I don't care. It's Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
Oh, you.
I watch
As
it.
soon as Hanks played Hanratty in
Yeah.
Catch Me If You Can, and then
Yeah.
the guy in Road to Perdition in the same year, I went, this guy. I mean, I already knew he could do anything. That was like,
When he played the captain of that
20 years
boat in that movie, and I was like, it works for me too.
and he, no Oscar for that. No, not even a nomination for that. He was amazing in it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all right, so Vertigo and Pride and Prejudice. Put them on your lists to watch if you have not. And
Especially if you're really depressed and having a tough time in your life.
have yourself an Austin Fest.
If you're considering
Make
suicide,
sure
watch Vertigo.
you watch Pride and Prejudice with a lot of wine.
I mean, twist the audience's arm.
Yeah, exactly. That's
So,
my
yeah,
favorite way to
whatever.
watch that film.
All right, so that wraps another TMG interview. Everybody, any other plug? What are we plugging? Where do we find WavelengthProductions.com?
Wavelength Productions, and make sure you check out Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood on iTunes.
iTunes,
Phenomenal
yep.
film. Obviously, we talked about Knock Down the House and Won't You Be My Neighbor?
That's right, the whole slate. And then the Infiltrators looked like it had an interesting premise. I want to watch that.
Yeah, fantastic
that's-
film. That's
Explain it
still
real
making
quick.
its way through the festival circuit right now, and that's about some dreamers who get themselves voluntarily arrested and put in ICE detention centers so that they can help the people inside get out. A very, very cool film.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
see that.
Good stuff.
All right, so follow us, the Movie Guys, here on Twitter and Facebook and all that, at the Movie Guys, Instagram as well, for daily nonsense and jokes and links, articles, media, and more. Thanks to Jenifer Westphal and Joe Plummer. I'll
Where
applaud.
was
Applause.
the-
I just
Where's the
noticed that.
applause?
Where's the
Sorry, I gotta go
applause?
back.
Nice.
There we go.
There you go. Knock
you,
Down the
Paul.
House is
Yeah.
streaming now on Netflix, and Won't You Be My Neighbor is available on VOD pretty much everywhere: YouTube, Vudu, Amazon, etc. And as ever, you can find everything we're up to at themovieguys.net. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.